So I'm going to try talking about Days Gone, but I get the feeling that most people are not going to be particularly happy with the way I talk about it, because a lot of people hate me bitching, and I have a lot of reasons to bitch about Days Gone. Some of it isn't the game's fault, but some of it absolutely is, and that kind of sucks. The main reason I have to bitch about it, though, is that the reason why I haven't been able to get around to this game yet, I would have had this video out like last week, but I've actually been waiting for the bloody game to come out. So the game came out, and I bought it off Amazon Australia on Amazon Prime with their like release day delivery guarantee, and it didn't show up until the following Tuesday. So that was kind of annoying. I was waiting every bloody business day for it to come in, but it just took ages, and then when I finally got here, the case had come loose in the disc, so I was a bit worried that the game wasn't going to work when I put it in. Thankfully, it was fine, but yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Days Gone before we actually get into the gameplay side of things. This is the PlayStation 4 version, obviously. There's only a PlayStation 4 version of it, and it's made by Sony Bend. If you're unfamiliar with these dudes, they're actually the people who made Uncharted Golden Abyss, but if you know more about their history, you'll know them as either Eidetic or 989 Studios, who previously made Siphon Filter. And Siphon Filter was a fun set of games, among the best on the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation Portable. So basically giving them the reins to do whatever they wanted and making a big budget game for PlayStation 4. And considering this game has been in the works for years at this point, I was hoping for something that didn't feel like it was just a bunch of shit gathered together from a bunch of other games. So, here's how the game works. You've got your bike and you need it to get around. You won't get far on foot without it. And you have to fill it up with fuel that you find around the place, and it also takes damage that you need to repair with scrap. And there is also, of course, other survival-related things, like your maximum ammo limit, at least at the start of the game. I can't tell you how far I am in the game at this point, but it's only a few hours. I couldn't play it for very long because of just how generic it all is, but look, we'll get to that. You have really limited ammo for everything, so it feels kind of weird only being able to pack 2 backup mags for an assault rifle in this game. It just makes no bloody sense. You do, of course, also have to craft your own healing supplies and things like bolts for your crossbow and stuff like that. But resources in this game are really easy to come by. I'm playing on hard and I'm still rolling in the supplies. If it wasn't for the fact that you can only carry so many bandages, I'd probably have 10 of them at this point. There's a lot of resources lying around, and going into the... and even finding things like gas for your bike is particularly easy, unless you do a really idiotic thing like going in the middle of nowhere and having to hoof to find some gas and come back to the bike. It's usually close by, but still, it's kind of hard to run out if you even remotely know what you're doing. So there isn't much in the way of like real supply conservation when it comes to the actual bike. When it comes to fighting off dudes with your guns and all that shit, yeah, you do need to conserve your resources a fair bit. It can be kind of annoying, especially when you've got to get through like 15 or something, either whether it be people or zombies, and we're just going to call them zombies, there's no point calling them anything else. But when you have to fight your way through 15 zombies or 15 people and you've only got like 7 bullets, admittedly that makes things a little bit interesting. The thing about the shooting in this game is that it's not satisfying at all. It feels really light and fuzzy. Like, it feels like most of your bullets don't do anything at all unless you aim at the head. And one of the things about hard mode in this game is that it completely disables not only aim magnetism, which is keeping your aim on the dude once you aim over them, but even aim snapping, which is like tapping the button in order to get your cursor to move onto a dude. And that means it's actually really hard to aim in this game if you're playing on hard difficulty, because actually trying to aim precisely on an analog stick, even on the lowest aiming settings with no aim assist whatsoever, is actually really damn difficult. And it feels like it's more like just a punishment of the game more than you personally. It's kind of annoying as hell because aiming at a guy and trying to get a shot on him, but even with the slightest taps, sending your thing going right past his head, even when you have the sensitivity as low as you can possibly take it without turning into a bloody tank at the rate that you turn, can be really frustrating to deal with. There's also the thing that most of the guns, like, it took me a while to figure out what the shooting actually reminded me of, but I figured it out eventually. It feels like a worse version of Grand Theft Auto 5 shooting. Like, if you look at the pistol from Grand Theft Auto 5 and then look at it from this one, it feels like almost exactly the same sort of gun, but weaker and just less impressive and enjoyable in general. I'm not entirely sure what the deal is, but the guns are just really unsatisfying, and most of them take a few shots to kill. I am playing on hard mode, as I said, and you can't actually put your difficulty down mid-game, and I'm not sure why. I'm pretty sure you can if you're playing on easy or medium, but for whatever reason, they just won't let you put it down on hard if you think it's being too difficult. I wasn't finding it too difficult, but for those of you who might be finding it too difficult and you start on hard thinking, oh, the games are just lying to me about how hard it is, and then you find that this game's a bit too much for you, tough luck, Sally. So, yeah. The game does also have bare bones, basic stealth mechanics, throw rocks, stealth kills, and not that much in the way of particularly useful, vision describers. Like, you can kind of sorta get a sense of how far the enemies can see and whether or not they're seeing you, but generally by the time that an enemy has got enough sight of you for them to yell out audibly, hey, who's that? It's kind of too late to get out of their way. You generally end up in a position where you're going to be seen one way or another, so you might as well just pull out the gun and start shooting. You do also have access to a sort of reflex mode, sort of slow time thing that you can trigger by yourself, and when you fire it off, you get just like a second or two of slow motion time to try and shoot a dude. Generally, you want to be using silenced weapons, because if you use loud weapons, if you're doing it in a human fortress like is on screen right now, you'll end up in a... Yeah, also bear traps hidden in the shrubbery that make me get seen, because this game's kind of a dick about that sort of thing. But yes, generally, if you're not using silenced weaponry, everybody will hear you, but out in the open world, when you're not in the middle of a particular mission, it can kind of really badly suck for you, because the zombies in this game are actually really sensitive to sound, and one gunshot can bring any number of 7 from any direction on top of you, and it can really suck at times. There is also, like, these massive-ass hordes that show up from time to time, but most of the time they're just scripted events, as far as I can tell. Like, they're predetermined to come out of a particular place and just, you know, general stuff along those lines. And that can be, like... The thing about the hordes is that, admittedly, they absolutely do look really cool. I haven't seen much quite like it. The best comparison I can come up with is ant swarms in Earth Defense Force. Like, it legitimately feels like you're playing Earth Defense Force when, like, 100 of these things just come swarming out of a lake. I do have footage of one of these hordes coming along here, but if that doesn't give you enough of an idea of how often you face these hordes, yeah, you don't fight them very often at all. They are very restrained with how much they use them, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, it's kind of nice, because the thing about the gigantic hordes is that actually fighting them isn't really that satisfying at all. Because... you know that clip they showed back in E3 in like 2015 or whatever, where this guy here, Deacon, was fighting against that gigantic zombie horde by walking slowly backwards and firing an assault rifle into the crowd? Yeah, you will never do that in this game. Ammo is too rare and zombies are too dangerous. Admittedly, they've done a really good job with making zombies dangerous. If you're fighting more than 2 at the same time, run the fuck away. That's all you can do. There is 0 point to doing absolutely anything else. And that is kind of disappointing. It would be nice to have some really creative ways to fight them just out in the world. But in the few hours that I've played, if I see a swarm of more than 2 or more of them, I just turn and run. That's all you can do. You just walk away. There is nothing that can be done about it. What is there to talk about? Crafting is really simple. As I said, there are resources everywhere. You never feel like you're particularly low on them. Once you get the upgrade that lets you see all of the, once you get the upgrade that lets you see all the plants on the minimap, it becomes really easy to fill up on your plants just by driving along the road and seeing a bunch of the icons on the side of the road. And that's kind of nice. But at the same time, the amount of times it makes you get off your damn bike is also really frustrating as well, because it just feels the need to make you do that a lot if you actually want to get the plants. And there are some plants that you absolutely do want to get too, like especially early on, you want to be getting as much crossbow ammo as you possibly can, so every time you see a specific tree, you want to be pulling off to the side and getting it, but that means you'll just be taking more and more time, which is frustrating. There is also hunting, but in the amount of hours that I've played, I've only come across like 2 sets of animals, and it just feels like a worse version of Far Cry. You try and shoot them in the face, and once you do, you just go over and you go to a certain angle that hides the body being cut apart, but yeah, it feels almost exactly like you're doing the same thing in Far Cry. And this whole thing here, this entire mission that I just did, feels just like Far Cry. There are a few other things like this as well. They call them ambusher camps, where you have to go and kill everybody in there in order to not actually, in order to keep the roads around them safe. There are a bunch of them throughout the game, and they all go down exactly the same way as they do in Far Cry. You're either going loud or you're going quiet, and then eventually go loud once you get spotted. Except in this game, you don't have any of the fancy tools. You just have slightly limited amounts of ammunition and stuff like that, but other than that, you're just going and fighting the same sets of dudes. In fact, the amount of skins they have for the troopers is actually really low, and you'll be seeing 3 or 4 of the same people at any one particular area every single time. There are also these like little side objectives you can find out in the world that you come across them and you follow them along, and eventually it'll lead you to something either like a resource dump or an ambush by some scavengers or whatever, and 2 or 3 of them will be the same skin. They didn't even make enough skins to make sure that at least every person wouldn't look exactly the damn same. And it feels so weird trying to take out the exact same people. It's kind of alright when you do it with like the zombies, because with the zombies people aren't going to be looking that closely, but when 3 people who are wearing the exact same clothes, have the exact same face, and are holding the exact same guns come along, it just kind of feels like they've put absolutely no effort into making the people look different, you know? And yeah, I shot that guy with a special arrow that I unlocked. The more story missions and stuff that you do, you just out of nowhere get these extra unlocks that can do things. Like, for example, I've got like this thing that gives me more stamina, and I've got that arrow which will make a dude go crazy and attack everybody, even though in this game it's pretty much attacking everybody anyway, except like one faction. It's a little bit strange. So yeah, I've cleared out this area. I've been told to go back and get my money. There are multiple encampments in this game, and when you do jobs for them, you get trust with them. The higher your trust is, the more stuff you can buy from them. So things like guns and bike upgrades and stuff like that. You do also have the ability to choose between 2 particular areas. I believe there's 3 in the game, but I haven't gone to the 3rd one yet. When you can pick between any of a couple, and they'll give you like different bonuses for each, but I don't know if there's anything story related going on there, but frankly I'm not going to play this game much longer to find out anyway. So yeah, what else is there to talk about that hasn't shown up on the video as of yet? God, I don't really know. There are a couple of neat things that you can do, like you can scavenge from cars to get like oil filter suppressors and stuff like that, but the thing about everything is that it all just feels so done already. Like, been there, done that, over and over and over again. It just seems kind of against the point. You can... Oh yeah, here we go. This is what I'm talking about. So here's your map. Tells you everything you need to do right off the bat. No secrets whatsoever. You can also fast travel if you like. It costs gas, but yeah, generally you'll be fast traveling to the main encampments in order to get your fuel back, turn in missions and stuff like that. There are also other things you can do. The way they do the quests in this game is kind of interesting, where you'll get like missions to do, you'll go do missions, and it'll fill up a storyline bar, and that storyline bar determines when you get unlockables. It's kind of neat, although it's kind of weird having an exact idea of just how long you've got until you have beaten a certain storyline. You don't think that'd be something he would inherently know. So when you return to town, you can sell things like meat and bounties. Bounties are things that you get just by killing the zombies. You pick them up as you walk over the top of them, and you get money when you sell them and extra trust. But the amount of trust you get for selling this shit is actually really low, so you might as well just be doing missions. You can also come to things here, like here's the kitchen, to sell off plants and meat for more trust and money. I've got tons of money right now because I've got nothing to spend it on, because your trust goes up so slowly that there is just nothing to spend it on. It's kind of frustrating, in all honesty. I could afford a really nice weapon from the gunsmith over here, but unfortunately I just don't have the trust with this encampment yet to actually buy the cool shit, and that kind of annoys me. It's nice being able to skip optional dialogue like this, and they do kind of do that Far Cry and Just Cause thing where they have radio broadcasts going on where there's someone talking about things. And admittedly, one thing that's interesting about this game is the characters. They're all one-dimensional, but they're all interestingly one-dimensional. Like, Deacon here is a really basic sort of, you know, gruff biker guy, but it's very clear that he's in a situation that even after 2 years since the zombies have broken out, the whole thing is just still kind of amazing to him. The smell of freakiness also makes him vomit. Everything like that is, he has to shoot someone in a story cutscene, which I have recorded in this video footage here, and he's very clearly broken up about it, and that sort of thing continues on through his character, which is a nice thing. There are a couple of interesting characters like that, especially Copeland, who talks to you over the radio about certain political things. And a couple of those things are actually talking about modern day political issues, but then he has a point, then Deacon fires back with his own point, which is kind of like, yeah, but most of Deacon's points are, yeah, no fucking shit that XYZ, because we're in the apocalypse. That's basically every response Deacon has to everything this guy says on the radio. It's kind of frustrating. But anyway, you have skills. More XP you get, the more of these you unlock, and you use these as, the more you put into any particular kind of skill type, the more you can unlock in that particular skill area. They're all really basic stuff, nothing particularly interesting. You can also find lots of different side missions to do, and I might as well start going over the type of side missions I've played so far, because all of them are bloody terrible. So we've got the Nero locations, which are just these little boxes. You have to find your way to their generators and then fill them up with gas, and then you can go in and get a free health, stamina, or like slow down time boost. That's all you get from them. You also get collectibles, but you know, collectibles, take or leave them how you will. I've personally been more or less paying no attention whatsoever. Excuse me. And there's the outpost clearing missions, which we basically just did one of. Like, the basic idea is that you just have to kill everybody in the area, and then you're done, more or less. Then you just take whatever is there. Usually it's something like a crafting blueprint that you can use to make things like special weaponry. That's more or less all you get from them. There's also nest clearing. And nest clearing is basically you wander into an area with 4 or 5 of these nests, and you're given a job to more or less burn them out. How do you burn them out? With Molotov cocktails. They show you how to do this very early on in the game. And yeah, as you can see, I can't buy any of the cool guns because my trust level isn't high enough, but thankfully I can buy at least some supplies. But yes,
should help out in this shit.
The freaking nests, which are the zombies. The zombies, as I said before, if you have to go up against more than 1 or 2 of them at a time, you're pretty much screwed unless you run away. You can melee attack them, but melee combat in this game is super one note. You just hammer the R2 button until the enemy is dead. You can carry around melee weapons, which can do the job slightly faster, which means basically you just pick up the best weapon you can, get the perk that lets you repair weapons, and then just use that the entire time while repairing with the literal mountains of scrap that you get just by wandering around the place. But yeah, the thing about the melee combat is that's so one note, it's horrendously boring. You can press the R1 button to do a sort of dodge roll out of the way, but you rarely need to do that. There are very very well telegraphed dodges that they can do, which you need to do your dodge on there. But other than that, nothing doing, nothing going on. But with Freakers, you just want to shoot them in the head. It just takes them down instantly. There's nothing else there to really be said about it. But for the nests, you have to handle things a little bit differently. So when you burn out a nest, you end up bringing out a few of them. Depends on how many. So if you're doing it at night, you get 2 or 3. If you're doing it during the day, you get 5 or 6. However, it's usually basically just, you don't have to actually kill the ones that come out of the nest in order to actually complete the mission. So here's how you do it. You park your bike somewhere nearby, you throw a Molotov in, and then you run away. You don't even wait for them to come out, you just leg it. That's all you do. The resources you get from killing the Freakers aren't really worth the effort, so it's just a really boring kind of side mission. You just go in, you Molotov, you run the fuck away. You do that a few times and you're done. You get a bunch of resources for it as part of the quest complete sort of thing. It also makes fast travel a little bit easier. Here comes one of those giant hordes I was talking about. The thing about the zombies is that, I'm pretty sure I talked about this already, but I'll talk about it again just to be safe. There's no way to fight these. I tried to demonstrate how to fight these, but as you can see, that's the best thing you've got. There is absolutely no chance of being able to take them out with just an assault rifle. There is no way that walking backwards slowly while holding the assault rifle and opening fire will do anything, especially in that first trailer where they made it look like it was taking out 1 or 2 with each fucking bullet. This game, you need at least 4 or 5, unless you get a lucky headshot, in which case it'll just go down instantly. So there's absolutely no point in standing or fighting, you just run away. That's more or less it. You just run away all the time, if there's more than one. Sometimes you'll run into interesting situations, like there'll be survivors in a car that you can send away for extra credits and stuff. Sometimes you'll see bad guys and freakers fighting it out, and you can choose whether or not to help one and then just kill off the other. But really, it's just not that satisfying. It's not that engaging. Especially since you can't really aim properly, especially if you're playing on the hard difficulty. There is no reason to play on hard difficulty if you are even remotely incompetent with aiming with an analog stick. I'm just running away thinking that someone has spotted me at that point due to the sound effects. So yeah, if you're wondering why I did that, that's why I did that. What else is there to say? The problem with that's just the problem with all of it. It's just somewhat interesting. There are some story cutscenes, but it basically feels like a really cheap rip-off of The Last of Us. It feels like the Asylum version of the intro of The Last of Us, the cutscene that you're going to see at the end of this story mission. And it is kind of frustrating in that sense, because you feel like that they almost had something, but with all the characters being as one-dimensional as they are, it seems like these guys aren't anything particularly special. They do give them at least you are, for the most point anyway, fighting for the good guys. One of them runs a forced labor camp, one of them is an absolute nut, but at the same time they are willing to do things like institute law and order and do things like go and murder rapists and murderers and stuff like that. But other than that, pretty much everybody has no character whatsoever. You get that huge, cutscene in The Last of Us at the very beginning, for example, where you get that little bit of bonding time with, can't remember the guy's name from The Last of Us, but him and his daughter. You get that little bit of bonding time between them in order to institute that little bit of a connection. At the start of Days Gone, you get like a 5-minute cutscene which basically just says, okay, this is this guy's wife, he's been stabbed and she's leaving, and then these two are going to go run off and do something else for a while. And you don't actually get to see the full version of that cutscene until you beat this story mission here in general. And then once you've done that, it's a really weird cutscene because it feels like they meant to do like a full-on tutorial there, but they cut out the tutorial bits in between the cutscenes, so it's just one big long cutscene that feels like it's got a bunch of shit missing. It's kind of bizarre, actually. So yeah, melee combat, just hammer away at R2. That's all you need to do. You will win. So yeah, I've played boring side missions, I've played story missions, which are basically just go there and kill this, or like the most interesting one that I've done is a stealth section that reminded me very unpleasantly of Spider-Man on PlayStation 4. But that's basically it. There are a few collectibles around the place, like in every Nero camp, there is a collectible that shows you what was going on when every Nero camp basically fell over and died, which is, I kind of like that sort of thing, that sort of neat little detail about the apocalypse, but I hate how every game takes place during the post-apocalypse and not during the fucking apocalypse, especially when it's a zombie apocalypse, because you can have some really interesting stories about what happened during the apocalypse, but no one does that. They do it like a few years later or something, where despite the fact that it's a few years later, there's still resources lying all over the place for you to take. And literally every single building, it is a sort of anachronism that I can't really just, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I just can't get it through my head. Also, if you're wondering why you're not actually able to hear the malicious soldier talking right now, it's because all that sound plays through the PlayStation 4 controller speaker. A little bit weird that it does that, but yeah. That's a thing. My main problem with it is that everything about Days Gone that's remotely interesting feels like it's been done better in other games. Like, this inventory here feels like it was done better by The Last of Us. This entire concept feels like it was done better than The Last of Us. I don't even know what the freakers are. I mean... Excuse me. So, I don't even know what the freakers are. Like, it does appear to be a major plot point trying to figure out as what the bloody hell they are in the first place. But, for some reason, the whole cordyceps thing they have going on in The Last of Us is just infinitely more satisfying in this game than this game for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. The shooting feels like something like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead more than anything. I haven't played Red Dead 2, but I have played the first Red Dead, and it does feel like they're trying to rip on those games. It's very basic shooting, it's unsatisfying, and again, you get next to no ammo for your guns, so you don't want to be shooting very much to begin with. The stealth system, doing things like taking out the scavengers, ambushes, that's who they are. The ambushes things are less satisfying in general than your typical game of Far Cry, because you don't get that many interesting toys to play with, at least not at the beginning. It just feels like it's so dull. Like, even in Far Cry, you had the really interesting ability to bring along things like tigers and stuff. Just bait them in with endless piles of meat. In this game, you can't do any of that sort of shit. They actively block off some of the side camps so that you can't bring along anything interesting. Like, you can't even bring in your bike. In fact, there are a couple of them that have this exact same thing. So, just to describe what I'm talking about, in order to get into these camps in the first place, you had to go along a certain path where you go through these hanging zombies, right? And at the end, the last one bites you and you have to do a quick time event to get out of it. They pulled the exact same thing with the exact same models hanging in the exact same set of trees twice, and I was able to guess, just purely because everything else is identical, that a zombie was about to bite me. So, yeah, it wasn't particularly great, it must be said. And it kind of disappointed me on that fact, because it's just so, It's just so weird that it feels like it's an amalgamation of other games, but done so much worse than all of them. And this is coming from the Siphon Filter guys, the people who made a taser that if you hold it on someone for long enough, it sets them on fire. This is from the people who made an incredibly interesting third-person shooter system, where, this is back on the PlayStation 1 by the way, so they didn't have the sort of like twin stick control scheme figured out for moving and shooting yet. The thing is about it is that they made it so that you had to lock onto a person and you had to wait to acquire target in order to be an active shot. It's actually the same sort of thing with your combat on the back of your bike, where you can press the L1 button to lock onto a target, wait for the aim to go down and then shoot. But in Siphon Filter it was a really satisfying mechanic. The enemies could do it too, and coming from them having some really unique mechanics and ideas, like being able to dodge roll everywhere. I mean, you can technically in this game, but it doesn't do that much for you unless you're absolutely surrounded by dudes. Or, again, you have to do the sort of, you know, you have to dodge out of the way because of an incredibly telegraphed move that's coming in. But yeah, it just feels like a bunch of other games slapped together poorly. There are a couple of neat things, as I said, like the gigantic hordes that can come out of nowhere, but again, with no way to fight them other than just run the fuck away. You don't even get to look at them for very long, because if you don't keep your eyes on the road, you'll run into something, you'll get surrounded, swarmed, and eaten. But even death in this game isn't that much of a penalty, because when you die in this game, you do get returned to your last autosave, and your last autosave is generally when you last got off or on your bike. So it's generally very, very quick to get back to what you were doing. The game itself is also kind of buggy. I've had some ridiculous bugs, like I've had my bike fly out from under me and go flying down a bloody cliffside, and I had to trek down 5 minutes to go get it. I've had every bit of audio except speech and music cut out more than once, to the point where it sounded like that trailer that everyone was making fun of The Mummy, where they accidentally uploaded an unfinished version that only had their screams. It was hilarious the first time, but the second time actually happened while I was recording this footage, so it kind of ends up being kind of frustrating in that sense. And yeah, it doesn't run particularly great either. It's on a PlayStation 4 Pro, if you couldn't tell by super sampling mode as enabled at the beginning of this video footage, but it doesn't run that great. Sometimes it just has this weird stammers, and the whole 30 frames per second thing on a third-person camera just doesn't work particularly great for me personally. It kind of makes me feel ill from time to time. It depends on the game more than anything else, but yeah, that cut right there where he said, I'm gonna go sneak around behind him, that absolutely felt like a sort of like part of the game that got cut out. I think they were going for the whole lengthened intro thing that they did in The Last of Us, but they cut most of it out. I don't really know what that's about. It just feels so weird. So yeah, that's the, yeah.
What's wrong?
He, I do appreciate that he's not the general tough guy that doesn't get unseated by anything, but at the same time, that's pretty, at the same time, the whole sort of like, I'm weaker than I look sort of thing, that's basically his entire shtick, and it does get a little bit boring after a while. I just, I don't really have that much else to say about Days Gone. I'm just incredibly disappointed by it in general. It is kind of depressing in that sense, because I had high hopes for this. I really do believe that the people who made Siphon Filter, I thought they would do better than this, but it's been a few hours. I've lost all ability to care. I think the game's a bore. All of the side activities I've tried have been boring as sin. The story missions haven't been that interesting. The characters haven't really been given any time to grow or just generally show any signs that they're going to be better people. Now it just feels like it's going to be business as usual for the longest time. And
Okay, Boozer, let's go. We gotta get on.
Considering that everything else just feels like it's been slapped together from better games, I'd rather go and play the better games. That's pretty much all I've got to say on Days Gone. I'm going to let this cutscene play out and then we're going to cut the video. You've seen pretty much everything there is to see. There's no constant encounters with a gigantic horde. There are a couple of other neat things, like being able to run into things on the field, but they do tend to turn into the same sort of repetitive encounters. And other than that, I'm not really sure what else to tell you about it. There is a photo mode, there is stuff like that, but yeah, I'm done. I don't want to play Days Gone anymore. I'm so disappointed in it. Maybe I can take it down to my local EB Games and get something decent instead. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.
You coming?
No.
Deke! What did you do? You rest easy, okay? I'll be back to check on you. And I know, yeah, you wouldn't want me to, but I guess Boozer's right. I can't help myself. It's like I said.